But I carried on because again, I was primed for this. I thought this was like the thing that was going to get me going. And of course, the other thing they tell you in Scientology, and they told me this many times, is that if the current service you did or that you're doing right now isn't handling the problem you're trying to handle, well, the solution's obvious. You just need to do the next service and the next one and the next one. And eventually, when you've done all the services, which are going to take you years to do.
And a lot of money.
$1 million in science. When we're talking about Scientology, we're talking about a lot of money. Then you're going to have the sun, moon, and stars, you see. So it's all, the carrot's always dangling out there for you, always. And I, naively bought into it. And I kept doing classes and I kept going down to the church on a fairly regular basis through the rest of my high school career. And when I was 17 years old, as a senior in high school, I finally graduated. And that summer, I was going to go to college. I was going to be a writer. I wanted to kind of follow in the footsteps of Stephen King, who was kind of my hero, one of my literary heroes. I loved his work, and I thought that I could do the same. I was a writer. I'd gotten myself into honors English classes in school. I'd gotten myself promoted into that program by writing stories and showing the teacher I was, literate and creative. I didn't pass the tests, the placement test to get me there, but I earned my way in there anyway. And I loved writing. I loved storytelling. And I thought that's what I was going to do with my life. And instead, I was going down to the church during the summer, and I was doing this purification sauna detox program that they do. And that's a whole another kettle of pseudoscience. But I was doing it. I was sweating out. I was spending 5 hours a day down at the church in Santa Barbara, driving down there every single day to do this detox program. And after I was done each day, they started wrangling me into an office and talking to me about working at the church. Because now that I wasn't going to high school anymore, I could potentially, leave home and start working at the church. And they had a personnel problem they had to solve. And they wanted me to help be the solution for that. And I thought, I don't know that I want to do that. And then they started showing me all these L. Ron Hubbard quotes about saving the world and how Scientology, they started introducing me to things that they told me were not broad, publicly known by all Scientologists, right? This was hidden information. This was confidential information. They were going to show me things that only staff members could see. The public don't get to see this, but you're special. And we're going to show you this. And they showed me writings from L. Ron Hubbard about how the world was going to, wasn't doing so good. And if Scientology didn't make it, the world wasn't going to make it. And we only had a few years. We were living on borrowed time, the oil crisis and the this crisis and the that crisis. It was all just from people's reactive minds. And we must clear the planet, which means we have to get rid of the reactive minds. We have to get people freed up of all of their stresses and traumas and engrams. And again, that was the reason.
Yeah. Uh-huh. And again, that parallels Mormonism and Christianity's sort of end times focus. We're called the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints because of this teaching that the end is near. What humans don't realize is the predictions about the end of existence have been going on for millennia. But a way that an organization loops you in is by making you feel like the end is coming. There's a pending destruction, and you are the chosen person that can help save the planet. And it makes you feel special. It gives you a sense of purpose and meaning and fulfillment. And that's so often how they loop you in. The other thing I just wanted to say, Chris, is that, of course, there's part of me that's thinking, man, it sounds like Scientology is just like self-help turned into a pseudoscience religion. And then I realized that's what you've just been telling us the whole time, that L. Ron Hubbard did Dianetics, which was self-help. And then he realized this could be much more effective without the purview of science and without government regulation. So let's take this self-help pseudoscience stuff, bake it into a religion, and then we'll be super financially and globally successful under those religious protections.
Exactly.
Without science inconveniently telling us that there's no empirical support for what we're actually saying, but it gets a youth like you hooked in, because who doesn't want to be better communicator? Who doesn't want to get rid of their insecurities? Who doesn't want to, get rid of anything that's an inadequacy so that they can be able to find love or find a date or make a family or be happy. And once the religion can convince you that you need them to be able to meet your life goals, then you're hooked.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that was how I got hooked, right? Because it went from the product of them working me over, and it took them days to do it. I was going down there every day. I was kind of a captive audience. I had to go to do this detox program. It was a daily thing. And coming out of the sauna after 5 hours, I was a little tired. And then they start working me over, and they start, doing this recruitment on me to get me to join staff. And there was clear, there was love bombing all over the place, because they kept telling me how great I was, how intelligent I was, how fit I was for working as a staff member, because not everybody is cut out to be a staff member, but you sure are. And I would suck all this stuff up. I mean, it was such an ego fest. I mean, it was awesome for somebody to sit there and, these wonderful people to tell you how wonderful you are, and these are the staff members who have been delivering services to me for the last couple of years. I respect these people. These are authority figures to me. And now they're telling me that I can be one of them, and not only be one of them, but how smart and brilliant I am, and how I'm part of the select few people who can be part of them, right? So I'm buying all of this. I'd never experienced anything like this before, and it felt wonderful. Then they're telling me that I'm going to be part of saving the world, and suddenly Scientology goes from something that I'm doing to improve myself to something that is absolutely necessary for the survival of our species. That was how they recruited me, right?
Yeah.
And so I had personal status going on, and I suddenly had this grim awareness of the world and how the world was going to hell, and I needed to do something about it. This was really, really key, because this put in my head some ideas that I held on to for decades, that made me make decisions that were very, very poor decisions for my life, right? Joining staff was the first one. After joining Scientology, I guess maybe it was the second one. But I went home, and I had to duke it out with my parents a little bit, because they had their own bad experience as Scientology staff members from their mission time. And they had to clear all that up. And I didn't really know a whole lot about it. All I knew is that suddenly they were really mad at me because I wanted to work at the church. They wanted me to do Scientology. They just didn't want me to work at the church, right? They didn't think I knew what I was doing. And you have to sign a 5-year contract of commitment. And the contract didn't promise me a whole lot of anything except free services, right? You get your services in Scientology for free as a staff member. You don't have to pay for them anymore. But they're going to pay you, next to nothing, right? They don't have to pay you anything. You sign up as a religious volunteer. I wasn't so keen. I wasn't so canny enough to be able to read a legal document and understand what I was actually getting into. And my parents tried to warn me, but I was 17 and I was done listening to my parents. So I just needed their signature on the dotted line, because I was a minor still. And they eventually relented, and I joined staff. This is after about 3 days of arguing and haggling back and forth.
And again, your parents didn't want you to join staff. Why?
Because they had been staff, and they saw
they got screwed over,
used and treated badly and not paid. And I mean, they saw behind the curtain of staff. They still, like I said, they still thought the subject of Scientology.
Yeah. So and this is powerful. The organization can even mistreat you, but the theology can be so deeply embedded that you remain faithful to the ideology even after the organization has mistreated you.
That's right. And that had been the cycle that my parents had gone through.
Yeah.
And they didn't want to see me make those mistakes. They never, ever wanted me to be on staff, but I got recruited and I was going to save the world. And there is nothing more dangerous to the world at large than a young person who thinks he's saving it.